All right. Good morning, everybody. Happy New Year. Welcome to the first Agrobotics Working Group meeting of 2026. Thanks for sticking around and continuing to join us at these meetings. We appreciate it. Um, we will start off this meeting with our new membership, which it looks like we have one. However, I do not see them on the call. Is there anybody else who's here for the first time that hasn't, or maybe not the first time, but just hasn't had a chance to introduce themselves before that would like the opportunity?
Hi, I'll put my hand up for that. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ali Karmali. I currently work at KPMG as a partner, serve our clients around ag tech, as well as other elements of decarbonization, climate change, and reporting. But I'm transitioning actually to an entrepreneurial role and starting a vertical farm here in central Ontario to serve the leafy green markets. So really happy to be here and look forward to the conversation.
Excellent. Sounds great. Thanks so much for joining us. Um, Anybody else who'd like to take the chance? No? All right. In that case, we can head straight on into our presentation for this week. So this week we're joined by Mariya Kravchuk from International Intellectual Property Ontario. And she'll be supported this morning by her colleague Mike Colucci. So Mariya, I will pass it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. My name is Mariya Kravchuk. I'm a manager of client success here at Intellectual Property Ontario. I've been with IPON since 2022, and my main job is talking to clients all day, every day, answering questions, helping them navigate next steps within our program, and so on. And as mentioned, I'm joined here by Mike Colucci, who is our resident IP expert. He will be here to answer any of your questions. If you do have any questions, we ask you to save them until the end. We'll have time for that. But today I'm here to talk to you about IPON and how IPON helps innovators. And let me just share my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, there it is.
Okay. So today we will be talking about why is IP important, how IPON can help you protect your intellectual property, and how to actually get our support, how to become a client of IPON. So why is IP important? Well, according to a research done in 2020 by the Government of Ontario, Canada is actually the world's open source factory for ideas. So we create a lot of intellectual property, but somehow we let other nations commercialize it. Canadian businesses that manage their IP, according to our research, are also almost 4 times more likely to export, almost twice as likely to have high growth, and almost 12% more likely to seek financing. They're also 3 times more likely to expand domestically and almost five times more likely to expand internationally. However, Canada is falling behind. So only 9% of companies have an IP strategy. Only 14% of companies who do R&D actually have any patents. And only 17% of companies believe that intellectual property is important and it's needed for their business. And here we have some stats for you about VC, venture capital, and exits for companies who do have patents versus companies who don't have patents. And you can see that there's a significant difference in a average VC size deal for companies with patents, 6 million, versus companies without patents, so 3.5 million. And also, if you have VC funding provided to late stage companies, it's 81% for companies with patents versus just 19 for companies with no patents. We also have some data for you here on companies who have patents and trademarks, and you can see that companies that have both are most likely to get funded versus companies who just have patents and who just have trademarks. And here is some information about successful exits. So companies that have both patents and trademarks, they can almost double their chance of a successful exit. 3.2 versus just 2.1. And here are some of our actual clients. And so if you are looking to gain a competitive advantage, to secure your idea from theft, to prevent someone else from using your technology and stealing it, to set up your business for economic success, to attract funding, to attract investors, and to just simply grow your business, we can help. So how do we help? How do we help founders? How do we help clients? So our agency was established in 2022 with the help of two ministries, Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, and MCures, Ministry of Colleges, Universities, Research Excellence and Security. And we were established specifically with the purpose of providing IP services and support to Ontario businesses. So our clients learn how to maximize the value of their intellectual property. They learn how to strengthen their capacity to grow. They learn how to be competitive in a global market. And they enhance commercialization outcomes with our help. And this is a picture of our actual client. So how are we different from other funding organizations in the province? So we have several resources for clients. And for example, IP benchmarking is a unique tool that was created by our team specifically for clients to help them see a snapshot of their IP health at any given moment. So you can come into our program, fill out the tool, get your report, and then you can fill it out a few years later to see how you have actually progressed through the business. IP education is very important. So if you know nothing about intellectual property, if you have no idea what a patent is, we can teach you everything you need to know about intellectual property. We can teach you a team, we can educate your team, we have workshops, we have a lot of resources available for our clients. You can get a badge and so on. So we will teach you everything you need to know. You don't need to worry. We have also just recently introduced IP coaching for clients. So what that is a one-on-one coaching support, which is available to every client to work on your IP commercialization, business goals, your IP strategy, and so on. And this is fully funded by IPON. We provide support with events. So we hold some events where we invite clients and they can meet each other, they can meet our team. We sometimes provide tickets to clients for some of the events which we sponsor and so on. And of course, funding. So once you become a client, you could be eligible to receive funding. And if you are eligible, we would fund up to 80% of eligible expenses for you to protect your intellectual property. So it could be filing a patent, it could be filing trademarks, and so on. So far, we have invested over $27 million and we have funded 8 colleges, 12 universities. And I think right now we have something, this is December 25, so we have about 1,300 clients. and you could be next. So how do you become a client? How do you get IP support? So we have some eligibility criteria that um, you have to fit in order to become a client. So you have to be an SME. If you're over 500 employees, we won't be able to help you. But if you're under 500 employees, you're an SME and you are eligible. You have to be based and operating in Ontario and intend to continue to grow your business here. You have to be an owner or an exclusive licensee of IP with an intention to commercialize it here in Ontario. You have to show that the business can bring social economic benefits to Ontario, create jobs, and so on. And you have to demonstrate financial ability to protect and commercialize IP with our help. So because we only, excuse me, because we only cover up to 80% of the cost for you, you have to be able to cover the remaining percentage. You also have to operate in one of our priority sectors. So we're not sector agnostic yet, but we do continue to increase our services to make them available to other sectors as well. So recently we have opened up to the agriculture and food technology sector. So hence why we're here, and we're able to help those sectors as well. So it's mining, clean tech, life sciences, AI and data-driven technology, vehicle technology, health technology, and advanced manufacturing if it supports any of these other priority sectors. Our applications are always open. There isn't a certain window to apply. You can log on at 5 a.m. from any country and just fill out an application form to become a client. You will hear back from us. I think the processing time for applications right now is around 4 weeks. We will get back to you anyway, whether you are eligible or not eligible. But if you are eligible, you will be invited to sign a client agreement and transition to become a client. Oh, excellent. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions? And I'm not sure if we have a raise your hand function or if there's a chat for questions.
There's both. We'll take
Okay.
questions in the chat or if someone wants to throw their hand up.
Maybe what I could,
Don't want everybody to jump at once.
Yeah.
maybe I'll just jump in and just provide maybe a little bit of maybe from my perspective. I've been practicing as a patent agent for 20 some odd years now. I've lost count. And the existence of IPON is such a welcome thing into that innovation ecosystem from the standpoint that when I started doing this type of work, there was no real support other than the service providers for to have work performed. There was no supports in the form of funding, and education was somewhat challenging to come by. You really had to trust what was being conveyed to you through your service provider. And as the value of intellectual property began to sort of settle in and people realized the real value, and that really only started happening, I would say, within the last 10, 15 years, as there's been a real appreciation. People have this appetite to learn about intellectual property, and I think we're filling that that huge gap that has existed. And there are others within this IP ecosystem that you can certainly explore and seek the services of. But for IPON, it's about providing education and it's about providing funding, because back when I started, if somebody, for example, didn't have funds, oftentimes I saw many clients essentially have to abandon their pursuits because they just ran out of money to pursue that IP. I do have a life sciences background. I worked with Agriculture Canada for my postdoc many moons ago. When I think back to what we worked on back then and where I see the technology going now, it's such an exciting time for this sector. We've opened up the sector just recently to one of the ones that IPON supports. So we are still growing that out. We still need to get out there and make it known within the agri-tech sector that we're here to help. But this is how we start that process, and we're really excited to be able to come to you today and say, hey, we're here because we would love to have you guys come knocking on our door. And as Mariya mentioned, the eligibility requirements are not overly burdensome or anything. We are really here to help you build value into your companies and secure all that IP that represents the hard work you've done to date. So just a little bit of a background there as to why we're here and why we're excited to be serving this particular sector. It holds such promise.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike, for adding that in there. Chuck, go ahead.
So I'm going to play some of the devil's advocate a little bit here. So some of the counseling I've been given is that sometimes the IP protection isn't worth it, and that the ag tech is so easily copied. Like the example would be like weed recognition software, all these kinds of things. And not only is it easily copied, it is advancing so fast that by the time that you go through the IP protection, it's outdated anyways. And so I'm looking for any feedback you're getting on that, and then as to because that's a pretty common piece of advice, is that it's better to operate in secret and just don't tell anybody what you're doing than it is to try to follow that. So I'm just curious what your opinion is on that.
No doubt that up until very recently, the general mindset, within sort of that software community was protected by way of trade secret, protected by way of, say, copyrights, which really doesn't provide a whole lot of protection if you just tweak it outside of the scope of those copyrights. And so there's really been a shift in.
Hey Dan,
Sorry,
mute everybody else, please.
Yeah, sorry everyone. Please keep your
No,
mics.
you can mute them yourself.
Oh no, I do, and as they pop up, I do mute. But I will just say a reminder: please keep yourself on mute if you're not speaking. Thank you.
Very good, thanks. And there has been a shift. What's been needed is the jurisprudence, the case law, as these various cases have worked through the courts, oftentimes in the U.S. first, has sort of tweaked the way in which we can protect things like software and so on, so that way you can actually protect it in a manner that it becomes a functional tool for you. Now, yes, you're right. The technology does advance at a rate oftentimes that the possibility of, say, somebody beginning to creep into your space, quite possibly the IP they may have secured, maybe they've gone beyond that. And that is just a plain reality. But IP does so much more than just offer you the ability to enforce exclusivity over technology. It also allows you to demonstrate to investors that you have something that does protect that point in time where you're at with respect to your developments. A lot of the work that I was patenting when I was working in automotive, despite my biotech background, I did spend many years in automotive, was more about securing investment. Because it became a valuable component to the company's portfolio, and it was more on that basis that we were securing IP. But if you do a Google search, you will see many references to now protected through trade secret, protected through copyright. But a lot of that dialogue predates a lot of the new case law, which has helped the industry, the IP industry, understand how do you present the technology in a patent so that way you can actually secure it, and how do you secure it in a way that gives you a breadth of coverage that allows you to enforce it against people that might be just slightly tweaking it but still fall within the scope of the claims. right? So it's always important that when you're seeking supports in that IP space, that you're dealing with a service provider who is very skilled and up to date on the current jurisprudence. And that's one of the things in our IP strategy seminars that we used to give in our education materials is we like to empower the client to do their due diligence to find service providers who can provide the most current information as it relates to protecting these areas, such as software, which can be problematic, with many different opinions on the best path forward. I know, Chuck, that's not, a definitive answer to say, yes, it is the best thing to do. But these are just points that are shifting it back in the direction towards formal IP as opposed to strictly proceeding on the basis of trade secrets. The other thing about trade secrets is once that is out of the bag, there's no putting it back. When you're dealing with trade secrets and you have to go into the courtroom, there are requirements in order to be able to prove that it was intended to be a trade secret in the first place. And many companies don't even exercise the right trade secret management procedures that would convince a judge that it was intended to be a trade secret in the first place. So, IP, which includes trade secrets, it's just not a registered form of IP. It needs to be properly managed, and again, that's where IPON can help, because it's not just about filing patents. It's about how do I manage my trade secrets? How do I manage all of this intellectual property, which is your creations? When we're talking about patents and trademarks, those are intellectual property rights. But IPON is also about just intellectual property, the stuff that you create. And we will put you in contact with people that will help you manage that in a way that it's properly protected.
Yeah, and I was just going to add to that, Mike, that one of the services that is available to our clients is service provider matching. So if you come in and you don't know any service providers, any trademark or patent agents or lawyers, we can help you find someone. We have a matching tool, and we're able to connect you to someone who has expertise in what you do. So you don't need to worry about that.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you. I'm not sure exactly who I'm passing it over to. It just says Valley Bio Limited.
Yeah, hi, it's Keenan Stone here, and I think my husband Ruben is also on. But we have a couple of projects ongoing and a couple of questions around our IP strategy. So we have been looking at IPON and we haven't applied yet, because one of our questions is, so we have our farm is our kind of our main business, and then our farm is the whole owner of another business and the majority shareholder of a third business, and all three have some intellectual property needs, and so we're just trying to figure out, for one, when we apply to IPON, what's the best entity for us to apply under, because like the farm has no employees really other than ourselves. The other businesses do have a small number of employees. Also, some of the work that we're doing in terms of, it's in a kind of equipment manufacturing project. We probably would like to spin that out into its own entity outside of the farm, because there are other partners involved. So we want to make sure that we structure that correctly, but we're kind of struggling a little bit right now with which entity do we apply for, or can we apply for like all three businesses if that works, or if we apply just for the farm, can we have multiple projects going under IPON at the same time?
Mariya, do you want me to take this question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, all right. That's a really good question. It's something that we're actually dealing with right now, about the interconnections between companies and what some of the implications may be. The answer to that is we're still sort of sorting some of that out. So, but I don't want that delaying you approaching and getting started with IPON. What I would suggest you do, I think probably the best person to speak with who's not on this call would be somebody who's involved in our intake side, because they are the ones that will look at the interconnections between companies. And we have previously suggested that you would apply where the IP is going to reside apply under each one of those companies. So you can have multiple companies in with IPON as long as they are separate entities, separate employees, separate revenue streams, and so on. But Mariya and I are not the best people to provide you with the definitive answer on that. So maybe what you could do is reach out to IPON. Mariya, I'm not sure if you're...
I dropped the link in the chat.
Perfect.
But what I just wanted to add is that essentially when you apply to become a client, your client ID is connected to your business number. So any IP owned by any IP we fund would need to be owned by the same entity.
That's correct. That's correct. But because there is a bit of discussion going on that might relate to that, I would reach out so that way you can get a definitive answer on maybe any suggested ways of proceeding forward on the basis of how those various entities are set up and the relationship between them. I think that'd be the best bet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks so much. Pass it over to Matt.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Yeah, so Chuck, I think you teed it up, and I'll certainly answer through our lens. So we had a show last month in Michigan, and there's some stuff we wanted to show there, but we thought it was pretty cool stuff that we might want to protect. So in October, we looked at it. We said, okay, we're not sure that we're all working on a very tight budget, and so spending a bunch of money on provisional patent applications felt challenging. So we threw in an IPON application, and we were fortunately successful. And so that changed the economics for us, where the cost benefit is like, okay, this makes sense for us to get the protection in, at least for the provisional. We'll decide in a year if we're going to go for the full application. But thanks to IPON's support, like it was kind of a no-brainer to get it in before the show. And so we got 2 provisionals filed in December, thanks to IPON support. And we have another one going in this month in advance of the show in Niagara. So I think your point's really well taken, Chuck. I think that's where for us, the IPON funding was actually what shifted it from it's really can't really make the cost benefit analysis to with IPON support. It made sense to get it in. And then the one other thing that I know that I think is coming down, maybe the IPON folks can comment on, is with the new IPON insurance program, it might actually give us the ability to actually enforce down the road potentially. So not only support to get the patents in place, but if we are in a case where we want to try and enforce maybe, or at least offend, maybe there's an opportunity there. But I think the IPON folks can speak much better to that. Anyway, Chuck, you teed it up. Figured I should hit it.
Well, I think that's a very fair point, Matt, and that's what I was trying to get at, because one of the concerns I had in my first discussions with a service provider, the first question they ask is, how much funding are you getting? And my billing is going to magically match how much funding you're going to get. And I'm always concerned about that, because I get when I put my taxpayer hat back on, I'm always stressed over where is this money actually going. And so my follow-up question would be, can IPON give us some direction as to what kind of fees are reasonable? Because that's one of the questions that when I get a quote from a provider, like, is it $7,000, $20,000, $5,000, $100,000? Like, I have no idea what to base that off of. And what is and going to a consultant is not an independent inquiry, right? Because they're kind of motivated. But I'd like to have some baselines as to what is reasonable, based on what we're trying to do. And then to follow up on Matt's point is the whole defense piece on how do you defend it later on is just as much of a concern.
Absolutely, Matt. Thank you for that, because certainly that I took it from a different perspective, but that obviously is we hear that very often on the defense piece. Like, fine, I can get a patent, but I'm not in a position to litigate this. Now, with that, and we had a conversation just recently with a client. One of the things that I think brought him some sense of ease, because he's dealing with a very similar situation of possibly looking at some element of litigation, is there, and this may not be optimal for everybody, but what you can look for in that sort of scenario is a partner. who can come in and help you. They can stand in your corner. We often recommend that when you are heading along that sort of IP journey from concept to commercialization, that you don't just look at them as distinct, separate things that operate sequentially. You may have to look at potential commercialization partners early on and maybe bring them in a little bit earlier, in the event that you may find yourself having to litigate in some capacity. Bringing them on earlier, they may be able to provide some sort of financial support if you don't have that there. Obviously, it means that you are working into some sort of negotiations maybe earlier than you anticipated, but that is one potential method by which you can help get beyond that. The other thing is this IP insurance, which is exciting to see. IPON clients will have access to this resource that will provide some assistance. Some of the details that relate to it, I think, are yet to be shared, but certainly when it comes to litigation aspects around IP, they can be horrendously expensive. Oftentimes, it will scare people away. But again, there is a value that is affixed to IP that is that gives you certain benefits that don't only just relate to the exclusivity aspect of it. It relates to locking in the value for the company. So when you were, say, looking to do an exit, that the IP that you are saying the company is based on is something that other people technically should not be able to copy and do. Where they do, there's a tool, a government granted tool that allows you to utilize the courts to put a stop to it. And again, it's not without cost, but with IP insurance, that can help sort of offset that. And that's why I think historically, again, IPON's not been around a long time, but we've not provided any supports as it relates to litigation. And this is how we are addressing that aspect of it, because clients they're asking for it.
So. Excellent. Thanks so much.
Okay.
And then we'll pass it over to David.
Hello, good morning. So we at the University of Guelph, we play with a lot of IP, and we are in the ag space, and we don't do a lot of patents in the ag space because in our assessment, there has to be a reasonable chance that we can get an enforceable patent. And then our second criteria. So if we don't think we can, if we have less than a 50% chance that we're actually going to get a decent patent, then we're very careful, because we're spending a lot of money that we know in the end is probably not going to get approved. And for some small companies, that's okay, because it is almost a negotiating tool and a marketing tool to show that you're an innovative company and that you are developing cool stuff. And your VC or your angel investors, they do want to see you having some patents. Many of them will walk away if you have 0 patents, even if those patents are weak. So I think a lot of people on this call are early stage, budget constrained, developing new things that they think have never been developed before. So in my opinion, the best value proposition that IPON gives you is, number one, they're experts. They can give you advice. You gotta get out of your own head and get other people to look at something and say, yes, this can be used in a certain way. This is worth at least starting the process. And then number two, it's Matt's value proposition, which is you're working on 100 things, and look, we just want to run one more prototype. And you have never even put a stake in the ground for, well, maybe we should try and protect the core of what we're doing, because usually it's the core that differentiates you. So at least start the process. And like Matt said, hey, if we can get $5,000, we can get a couple, one or maybe two, but we can get a provisional filed. And now we have a year to do our homework. Now we have a year to take a look at the competition, to take a look at what we have, and you have a year to improve it. Okay? So So once you know where you stand, you can make a better decision. So at the university, what we do is we climb a mountain of debt. We start off with, we spend a minimum of $5,000 just to open the door and start a provisional. Sometimes we spend up to 10,000. But anyway, for us, we rarely spend less than $5,000 because that's what it requires to work with the experts. Okay. Yeah. Then when we look at it, we start doing our homework 6 months later, we're halfway down the 1 year timeline of the provisional. We're like, who's the competition? Who's catching up? Because there's other people in stealth mode and you can only find so many of them. And so you want to see what they're doing. And if you really are unique and you really are first and you really are the, a BlackBerry or a Nortel take an AI company, then you can reassess that. And if you don't like what you're doing and it has to go the trade secret route, which is sometimes a very viable route, you can back it all off and the provisional is confidential, throw it all away and carry on with your new trade secret strategy. Because if you're doing public presentations, like Matt said, he was going to, go and talk about something, you never tell them everything anyway. You tell them the value of it. You don't tell them how to copy it and how to build it. You say, this is what we do and it saves you this much money. We're using AI. That's it. You don't say, they want to know where's your database and all that other stuff. Forget it. Because in AI, as we all know, and Matt's much more an expert than, well, probably our expert right now, it's about the training data and access to it because the algorithms are mostly pulled out of the public space. So you're not going to patent those in terms of the software, but you are going to have multiple stakes of protection. So patents are one way to protect, and they're really good when it's really clear you're going to have a patent that's strong. They're not very good if there are a lot of bullshit and they're not if there are a lot of marketing and they're just kind of like, oh, we have a machine that'll pick carrots. You're like, yes, so what? I mean, it's not going to go very far. So talk to IPON. They have free money. They have a little bit of money to get you started. That is key, because if you don't have the $5,000 and your company's struggling, then you're not even going to consider it. But they can help you out to get to that point. And then you never know, in the next year, you may find another investor to come in. You may find a big sales boom, or you may have a relationship, or there might be another grant. Who knows? And then you can spend more money. So you might spend $5,000 right away. Then you might spend another $5,000 to $10,000 at the 1 year point. Then you might spend another $5,000 to $10,000 if you're really going to go global, like filing a PCT. But the point is that take the small bet first to get in the game, because if you don't, you're not in the game at all and you can't go backwards. And maybe Mike can talk a little bit about the grace period, but really that's mainly for patents. But I think with this group, you have to think about multiple stakes in the ground: copyright, clearly delineated trade secrets, like stuff that you've put in the vault and you say, this is marked a trade secret, this goes to certain people, we have confidentiality agreements for our employees, and we don't share this with any of our collaborators. Trademarks, for sure. You should be trademarking everything for free with the TM in the top right corner. Maybe chip design, that's up to you guys. Maybe methods, probably keep them secret for now until you really have to tell somebody about the method, because once you patent a method, you're telling other people how to use it and they're hard to protect. So tap into IPON because it's free. They got brains and they got money, at least to start the process. And then you can always back away from it later if you go, this isn't worth my time.
Yeah. I mean, David, that's awesome. I mean, what you've demonstrated is the value in building an awareness around IP, because what you've just explained, there's so many elements that relate to an IP strategy. And that is also one of the elements that IPON is trying to build into the innovator ecosystem, is really this IP awareness. So that way you can understand how each one of these various tools can be used and the value of it. And that and that can't be understated. It is so important that, I mean, you mentioned grace periods, right? So it's clear that you've got this understanding. I mean, a grace period is, let's say, for example, you did go and attend a conference or something, and you did disclose some content that maybe went a little into the actual workings of the invention, and you feel as though maybe you've given a little bit too much away. In some countries like Canada and US, there is what's called a grace period where you can still file a patent up to a year from that initial disclosure. And there's some things you got to be very careful as it relates to that, because certain countries will look at that differently in terms of when a formal application is in place relative to that disclosure. I never really counsel clients on grace periods because I don't want them relying on it. It can be a bit dangerous. They may make some assumptions. But, these types of workings that relate to the IP system, it's important for you to understand these, because that way you can navigate this process, which can drive so much value into your company. It's not something that needs to be feared. It really is about, giving you, empowering you to use IP to drive value. One of the other things about filing patents that we are beginning to see more often now is that because there are various tools in which companies can declare, hey, you know what, we've just filed this patent, and we're innovating all these social media platforms. It's a method for you to attract talent. Because if you are demonstrating through your filings that you are an innovator, and people can eventually look those up when those applications are published, you may find people knocking on your door saying, I want to work for you because you clearly show a dedication towards driving innovation. So it can really attract that talent. And Chuck, I forgot to answer your question about, can IPON provide an idea of costs? We don't provide specific dollar values. But for any service that we are providing support for, there is going to be, understandably, a fixed upper limit of what we can provide in terms of support. And there is some logic behind the number we've fallen upon. It's not just we've picked it out of a hat. It does relate to costs that have been seen over a period of time that are upwards of in the 80th percentile of what we've seen in terms of costs. So, but that being said, it depends on your technology. I've drafted patent applications where I've been able to get through it for $4,000. I've drafted patent applications where it's cost upwards of $20,000, and it really comes down to the nature of the application. But if you're a client, you've got a bunch of people there to provide assistance in terms of trying to land on the right service provider, who can do things sort of, who can meet your expectations. And as Mariya mentioned, we provide this matching mechanism whereby we can maybe tailor some of those suggestions of who you might want to work with.
Well, I appreciate that, Mike. And I think I like the idea between what you talked about and what David talked about, is that even if you start small, you don't have to go for the home run global patent, do everything from day one. Just do something. I like that feedback and appreciate that.
One of the things that I'm often trying to enforce is that make sure that your IP strategy is aligned to your business strategy. One of the things that people tend to do, because oftentimes when you're developing technologies, there may be some peripheral elements, and you might be thinking, I got to protect everything because anything I create, I got to protect. Really, what we're trying to enforce for startups, for young companies, is make sure that you're protecting the elements that support your business strategy, the things that could translate into a revenue stream, the element that you're going to be commercializing. It is an old sort of mindset to just protect everything, but that becomes a huge sink. Like, you just end up consuming so much in the way of funds to build a portfolio that becomes largely meaningless. So value will come from a portfolio that is linked to your business. And that's what we encourage people to focus on. Once you've got a little more revenue to play with, then we start talking about looking at some of the peripheral elements that might be about building a moat and having a long-term plan about areas where you can expand into. But in immediate sort of short term, for new companies, we emphasize, make sure it's aligned to your business strategy and how you can, and then how you envision commercializing what you are doing. And that should be your focus point. Your value proposition is really where the patenting should be focused.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Excuse me. Thanks, Mike. All right, Conrad, I'll pass it over to you and everyone. This will be I'll cut it off after Conrad just so I can get to a few last agenda items. But we really appreciate all the discussion and all the interaction. So thank you very much. But Conrad, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mariya. Thank you, Mike. Your input is very valuable here today. I had a question more in the front end. How do we actually do a patent search or actually understand what part of our technology is actually patentable? That's usually what the first step is, where we're kind of struggling in the very beginning, that we actually don't even know, does it even make any sense to go further down the road? And how do we assess that, basically?
I mean, due diligence is extremely important. I mean, due diligence up front is really going to do a number of things. I mean, as mentioned, if you are pursuing a patent on something that really isn't even patentable in the first place, clearly you're throwing dollars away. That's from a patentability standpoint. The patent searching can also be about keeping you safe to ensure that you are not going to be infringing on something that's actively enforceable out there. So that's more from an FTO, freedom to operate perspective. So patent searching as a whole is extremely important. How would you go about doing that? Okay, so through IPON, there's some variability there in terms of what we can support when it comes to patent searching. I'd love to say that we've supported across the board. It really will become dependent on where your business position is. And even with that, FTOs are something that we simply don't cover at this time, which is kind of unfortunate, but that's just the way it is.
What is FTO?
Freedom to operate.
Okay, so yes.
Yeah, it is a type of search that is extremely extensive.
Yeah.
And connected to it will be a claim analysis that looks to see what you are proposing to introduce into the marketplace, whether or not it potentially falls within the scope of any active claims of companies that are operating in that space.
Right. But related to your technology, it would be important to understand that.
Absolutely. Now, the thing about patent searching is that it is something that one can actually learn to do. There are many tools that are available that allows you to go into these databases. Are all publicly available. Now, I always like to recommend to a client that when you're getting to a point where you really do need to make a definitive answer on something, I like to see them engage an IP professional, because they'll need that final assessment for some certainty, because there is a certain language that's used within patents that can sometimes be a bit confusing, and how you might interpret something does require a certain degree of knowledge of what you are permitted to do, when it comes to interpreting the language. But you can certainly go to the United States Patent and Trademark Office website. You can go to the Canadian Patent Office website. You can go to eSpaceNet, which is a European site. You can use Google Patents as another tool, and you can start learning how to seek out some of the prior art that relates to the technology that you're envisioning. When I worked in house and I had a team of engineers, I would encourage they learn to use things like classification searching. It's a little more complicated, but it's where, let's say you are working on a technology and you choose to describe something one way, and somebody else is developing technology and you're describing it a different way. If you're doing keyword searching, which is using words, that it may actually not find the other case if that keyword is too different from what you are searching with. Now, some of the semantic searching and some of these other tools are beginning to kind of render that moot, and you are beginning to cross these barriers. But classification searching is where they will take these different technologies, and where there are the common elements, they'll be classified and put into sort of common buckets. And by searching the buckets, even though they might be described using different language, ultimately, if it's similar technology, they'll exist in the same bucket, making it easier to identify them. I would say it's not outside the abilities of people to do a little bit of, to learn how to do some of that initial due diligence. But again, I always suggest that when you begin to fall upon something that maybe requires a definitive analysis, that you engage a service professional to be able to do that final assessment, and possibly, if it's required, an opinion in some cases. So,
Thank you. Yeah.
so
I think that's it for Mike. I think we need to go, right, Dan?
Don't need to go, but I am just gonna say thank you very much for being here this morning and for all the information. Um, Great conversation, great connection there. So we really appreciate you taking the time.
you're very welcome.
Thank you very much for inviting us. And for anyone who's interested in becoming a client, I dropped my email in the chat. So feel free to reach out. We can set up a call and so on. But thank you for having us, and have a great rest of your day.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Yep.
If you'd like to hop off, by all means. If you want to stay for the last few minutes, I'm just going over some more agenda items, but feel free. You're
Okay.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Hey, Dan.
Yes.
I'm not offering free service, but if you want to talk about prior art, you feel free to give me a call. We have a patent database that we pay for, an expensive patent database that we pay for, and we could spend a few minutes to look for some stuff if you were looking for it. It's called PatSnap. I'm sure Mike is very aware of it. There's very expensive patent databases that the lawyers use, but we use it for the university, and we could have a little bit of an informal discussion one-on-one if people are, like, what the heck's going on. But you do have to do your homework. So, you got to put some effort into it. Otherwise, you're going to pay, $400 an hour for somebody to do a very big search for you that's expensive. So, but if you don't know your backyard, you don't know your landscape that you're competing in, then it's very hard to make a decision. So I'm just kind of saying we have some tools. I may be able to help people occasionally. Okay.
If you can pare it down a little bit before engaging a service provider, you'll be able to save on costs, because you'll be able to define the nature of the problem a lot better. Otherwise, you're just giving them a clean slate to kind of work with, and the cost will just jack up very, very quickly. So,
correct.
Yeah. Perfect. Thanks for adding that, David. Appreciate it. Would you maybe be able to drop your email address in the chat, just if there is anyone who's looking to reach out and maybe connect on that? That'd be great. So just in the last few minutes here, it's been a few weeks since we've been together, so I just want to give a quick rundown of some upcoming events. Early February, the 6th and 7th in Sudbury, the Northern Ontario Ag Conference. Future of Food is going to be in Ottawa on February 10th. And along with that, on the 9th beforehand, Kane will be hosting their fireside chat. So if you're going to Future of Food, maybe go a day early, and hopefully you can participate in that as well.
It's free.
And it's free, so no reason not to. The Ontario Fruit and Veg Convention is going to be coming up in Niagara Falls on the 18th and 19th of February, followed by our London Farm Show on the March 4th to the 6th. And then at the end of March, on the 26th, we are going to be having the Canadian Agrobotics and AI Summit. Our website does have a page for that event up now. We're going to be filling it in with some more information very soon, early next week. So that will get populated. We're really excited. Joe's been working with us and helping us track down some great speakers, so it should be a fantastic event.
Yeah, maybe just a couple comments. Chuck and I met this week. He's invited a bunch. I've invited a bunch. If you have speaker ideas, you can forward them on to Chuck and myself. We're planning to have a kind of pitch competition for the companies like Finite Farms, and we've got investors and people coming that will support those. So if you're interested in the pitch competition, maybe send your interest into Dan, and then we've already got too many that we can present, but we'll kind of be in touch with you and try to showcase a lot of the good early stage local technology companies. So, and then I guess if you're interested in exhibiting, we've got a few exhibit spaces. If you're interested in sponsoring, and then this thing's going to sell out. So as soon as the registration's up, I encourage people to register. We're keeping it really cheap compared to other conferences because we want a lot of participation. So yeah, it's come together really well. Chuck and I are commenting. Almost everybody we've asked has said yes as far as coming to speak and participate. So I think it's going to be a hopefully very valuable networking and just extend what we're doing here with the digital and the webinars. And Ian and any of the OMAFA people that want to help, if you want to help us, and especially Kristen, if you guys want to help us with emceeing and a few things like that, just send me your bio and your headshot if you can, and we'll get you guys up on the site as participants, sponsors, leaders, founders, whatever you want to call it.
Perfect. That's great. Thanks so much, Joe. All right. That brings us to time for this week. Once again, I want to say thank you to Mariya and Mike for taking the time. Thank you to everybody who asked such great questions and the participation. It was a great meeting this week. Everybody have themselves a great weekend. Next week, the speaker is going to be Mike Verhoog, sorry, from Drone Spray. So if you're interested in drone stuff, next week is definitely a good time to come by. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next time.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day, everyone.
Dan, are you still looking at March 6th as an in-person?
Yes. Yes. Sorry for the working group meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Okay.
that is the intention. It'll be very similar to how it was last year.